All right. We are live. Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Refold mid-year live stream for 2022. Thank you so much for tuning in. We really appreciate you being here with us. So over the course of the next couple hours, we're going to talk about what we've done over the past 6-7 months throughout 2022, what we're going on to do into the future. So we're really excited to show you what we've been working on behind the scenes. So to kick things off, I'm going to do a quick summary through a slideshow of what we've been doing over the past 6 months. If you are a $10 tier patron, then you're used to this, and this will probably be a lot of repeat stuff. I do these live streams every month to show off what we've been working on, but the general public hasn't seen a lot of this stuff, so hopefully you like what you see. So let me kick things off. I'm going to share my screen. All right. So quick update on the community. So we've reached 27,000 members on Refold Central. In the Refold Japanese server, we're up around 13,000. English and Spanish are at around 4,000. So we're really excited to see the level of growth in all of these communities. Obviously, Japanese is dominant, so we definitely want to grow the other communities up to that level, but we're really excited to see the number of people coming in and the amount of activity. It's really great. For me personally, I think the community is the best thing that we have at Refold, and so it's really exciting to see that it's thriving and growing. Along the same lines with the community, we got some feedback from our moderators and from various community members that it was hard to find things. You know, we have this server network where things are split up into all of these different areas. And that means that you don't get a lot of visibility into what's going on in the other servers. So we decided to create a homepage for the community, community hub, if you will. And so it's a centralized location where you can see all of the events that are going on throughout the server network, where we can showcase community projects. There's tons of awesome members of the community that are working on open source projects to help people learn. And we want to make sure that we are advertising those to the broader world and making it easy for new volunteers to help connect with those. We've also started uploading some success stories and some blogs. So these are individual learners' stories of how they've gone through their learning process and what their results have been. And then on the blog side, different opinions along the way. We started with this roadmap, which is just a couple people's opinions, but now that other people have actually gone through the method and they've gone through the process of learning, we want to make sure that we're capturing all of their ideas, because there's definitely more to be learned about this process. So if you want to check out what's going on in the community, head over to community.refold.la and you can see everything that's going on. On the event side, we've been really excited to see the number of events that are proliferating in the community. We're now at the point where anybody can volunteer to host an event, and we've seen a couple of different things pop up. One of the organized events that we did was the Batman Unburied Multilingual Club. So this is a cool podcast that Spotify dropped with, I think it was 8 languages. So everybody could listen to it in their target language and then come to the podcast to talk about it. And that has actually morphed into a weekly podcast. Led by our one and only George Pig super admin. So really excited to see that content coming out of the community and that sense of community being built around the different content that folks are consuming. Coming up, we've got the Studio Ghibli July. So this is members of the community watching Studio Ghibli movies together in their various different target languages. We've also seen a lot of moderator Q&As in the Japanese server, as well as the Mandarin server, and interviews with various different learners. So we're excited to hear their stories. We want to start collecting that, and we'll be talking about that a little bit more later. So other things that we've been working on. So, the Refold guide is language agnostic. It's just a general purpose guide. It needs to be adapted to different languages. So we've started that process. We built some technology on the website that allows us to very quickly and easily configure new languages as long as we have the right resources. And so within just about a month, we were able to pump out about 17 different language guides. And one of those is actually in Spanish for English learners. So we're going to continue to translate those and also expand them. Right now, they're still static. It's a lot of text on the screen. We want to change that. We want to incorporate video. We want to incorporate interaction, et cetera. But those are longer-term goals. And these are all free on the website. Part of our mission is to expand these ideas worldwide, and that means appealing to people who speak different native languages. So the first native language that we wanted to tackle was Spanish, because there's an enormous number of people trying to learn English through Spanish. So we translated the simplified guide into Spanish and released that back in February, I think. And then we just recently released Polish. German and Portuguese have both been translated, but they're still in the approval process. I just want to thank and give a huge shout out to all of the translators that have come in and helped to translate these guides. We really appreciate all the work that you do. And if you are interested in volunteering to help translate the guides, then head on over to crowdin.com/project/refold. And from there, you can just jump right in. We've got a community in one of our servers that allows us to communicate about the different translations. So just let us know if you're interested, and we'll set you up. We've been working on a bunch of different new 1K decks. So we released the French 1K deck in January, and then a couple months later, the English for Spanish speakers. We're continuing to work on English speaking products. So we've built what's called our Gen 1K, or our generalized English 1K deck. And so that's for distant languages, a single unified deck that we can easily translate just the definitions and the translations of the example sentences. And from there, we can very quickly churn out this learning product for various different languages. So we're excited about that. And that actually just finished up last week. In progress, we've got German, Italian, and a V2 of the Korean deck. The Korean V1 deck didn't have example sentences, so we actually are incorporating those. We actually decided to start from scratch and go through our entire deck building process. I'm very excited about all the new deck work that we have been creating. And I want to give a special shout out to to Josh, who has been managing these deck processes. He's done a great job, and the original decks took about 200 hours of effort to build, and these newer ones, because of the automation that we've built, are actually only taking about 80 to 100 hours. So very excited to be able to save a lot of time on that using automation. We've been looking at different partnerships and also trying to integrate immersion learning methodologies and ideas into school curriculums. So we have had some informal conversations with 3 different schools to see if they're interested, and many of them are interested. They're just not exactly sure how to integrate it into their curriculum. So those are ongoing conversations. Nothing solid to report there, but they're conversations that we're going to keep having over time. We've also been networking with lots of other language learning tools and programs and forming business partnerships with them. So there's different content crossovers, and some of those other businesses are helping us to develop different products. So really excited for those partnerships. If you want to see a full list of them, you can head over to the community site /about us, and you can see all of the different people that we work with and the different companies that we work with. Another big thing that we started doing about 3 months ago now is we started surveying learners and interviewing them, trying to understand where they were struggling. And it became very clear that many learners needed more structure. So, the guide is built around this idea of self-service. You're supposed to be able to take the ideas and the tools and everything and arrange it in however you need in order to learn. But a lot of people want more structure than that. They want it to be like a course or a program or a boot camp or something like that. And so we decided to start going down this route to explore it and see if we could provide value there, and specifically around building healthy habits with immersion learning, et cetera. So we've got 10 clients in a private beta. Those were recruited out of our Patreon, and it's been going really well. We feel that we have created sort of a new framework for how to think about developing immersion learning habits. And so we're planning to scale that over the next few months. So if you're interested in getting more support in your language learning and having more structure and accountability from a coach, then look to your inbox. We'll be sending out some invitations in the near future. I'm also really excited to announce that we've been growing our team. So we're up to 8. It's on 2 different slides, but I want to start with our sort of general purpose team. So basically everyone on this list is a generalist. They do all sorts of lots of different things, but we have some, they have a primary role. So Clayton, also known as George Pig, you've probably seen him in the surveys, and he manages the entire community, the entire server network. And so I really thank him for being the top level admin of everything that we do, for managing the community, keeping an eye on it so that I can focus on other aspects of the business. Vanessa is a recent hire. She goes by Shiki, and she is one of the prime helpers in the Japanese community, and is just constantly there answering questions, helping newcomers get used to immersion learning and to Refold in particular. And so we decided to bring her on full time as a language coach to help us scale up the coaching offering. Ben is an admin of the Spanish server, and he is a generalist. He can do pretty much anything. It's been really cool to see. He also happens to be a English teacher as well. But he does everything from content creation, video editing, the community site he built. So really excited to have him on the team, and really appreciate all the work that he's done. And then I also want to introduce Bree. Bree's been around for a long time. She is an admin of the Spanish server, but she also runs our social media. So really want to say thank you to all of the members of this team for joining. On the technical side, this is our software team. We have Daniel and Lindsay, who are web developers. They work on the website. We've recently hired Alo, who is both a web developer and a Chrome extension developer. So we're planning to build out more tools in the near future. And so we wanted to hire him. He's a strategic hire for us to be able to build those Chrome extensions well. And then Josh, you're going to be hearing from in a little bit, is our resident data scientist. So I want to welcome the team, and we're going to jump right into a quick roundtable with a couple members of the team so that you can get to know them. So I'm going to stop sharing right now. And then Ben, Vanessa, and Clayton, you want to hop on in?
Hello.
Hello.
Clayton, where are you at?
Oh,
there you
am
go.
I talking now? I wasn't sure
You
if I
are
was supposed to be
now.
talking yet. Okay, cool.
Welcome, welcome, welcome. Thank you for joining. Thank you for showing up on a Saturday. Really appreciate it. So let's just go quick roundtable. So I already mentioned a little bit about where you all came from and how you ended up working with Refold. But let's start with Ben. Do you want to give a quick overview of your language learning journey, how you found Refold, what your role is, and what you're most excited about?
Sure. For my language learning journey, I started kind of back in high school, like most people in the US, and realized that I really actually liked my German class. It was like the only class I really liked in school, and it sort of led me down a path of looking into phonology and phonetics and linguistics in general. I really enjoyed that whole process. I got okay. I was considering going to university and actually getting really good at German. Then I sort of fell off that for a bit. Then I fast forward quite a while. I was learning how to teach English because I had done a lot of things in that sort of area and just really liked language sort of phonology and phonetics at that point. And then I found myself teaching English and sort of saying all these things that students should do. And then I found Refold and was like, oh, this is exactly what I say, but better written, more complete. Why am I not doing this with my Spanish, which is what I wanted to do at that time. And then I sort of dedicated my last year to Spanish and have really been enjoying it a lot, and have found a lot of success and enjoyment in that. That's my language journey. As for what I'm really excited for, I know this is quite in the future, but like you mentioned, I'm really, really excited for Refold in the classroom, working with like other parts of the world to sort of get this style of learning, this proficiency of language much, much higher. Not necessarily proficiency, but like the ability to connect with the language. Because so many people in the world learn English because it's the language to learn, rather than like really enjoying and falling in love with English, which I think is really, really cool.
Yeah, that's great. I'm also super excited about the classroom side of things. That's really where I want to go. It's just changing the traditional model is just it's it's changing minds around it is just going to be a very long process.
Yeah, and I can't imagine it's going to be easy.
Right, exactly. Yeah. So awesome. Well, welcome to the team. And I already described a little bit about your role, but do you want to talk about that at all?
Oh, yeah, I do everything. I it's like if something needs to be done and we don't really have somebody to do it yet, I will be the one to do it. Basically, I learned a lot about making the site. I'm also just like testing things like that we might want to do in the future. It's like Ethan's like, okay, go try this out. See, is it useful? What is it? All right. I also have been doing some bot stuff, some Discord stuff, some management, a bunch of things. I did the recording for the ESEN1K and bunch of different things. So, and I like doing that. I love being a total generalist and just doing a bunch of different stuff every single week.
Awesome. Cool. Well, we are happy to have you on board.
Me too.
Let's jump to Vanessa.
Hi, I'm Vanessa. You know me
Hi.
as Shiki in the Japanese server. Japanese. So as far as my language journey, I've been a weeb since childhood. I started with Dragon Ball Z, which is kind of weird for little girls, I guess, but that's how it went. And it's to a point where my parents were very much aware of how much of a weeb I was. So they would try to buy me books for like kanji and things like that to learn Japanese because, of course, what weeb doesn't want to learn Japanese? So, yeah, and pretty much kind of the same thing of beating your head against the wall for years and years and years trying to learn a language and not getting anywhere. And then I decided that I was going to leave one of my major jobs. So I knew I'd have some free time. So I started looking into how to learn Japanese for real. And that's when I found Matt versus Japan. And then kind of slowly warming up to the idea because I feel like I kind of figured it out intuitively, but I never like put a word to it for the methodology. So it took me a little while to accept it. But then once I started, it was like, why wasn't I doing this the whole time? Like that kind of thing.
Sure.
As far as my role, I was brought in to be a language coach. I'm still in training for that. So I pretty much do everything like Ben does. Probably because I was noticed for basic living in the beginner questions channel on the Japanese server.
Yeah, a lot of people kept, highlighting you like every time you would answer something, and I just kept hearing your name all over the place. Like, yeah, she's there every day helping beginners. I'm like, we should just, bring her in to do that professionally.
Yeah. They kept telling me I need a raise, and I got it.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So,
From zero to non-zero.
Yeah, exactly. For what I'm excited for is, like Ben said, the partnerships with schools, trying to overtake the traditional mindset with people, and also expanding the YouTube presence, because we have a lot of content we could put on there. And I think since we already have the other social medias, we should definitely be taking advantage of that area.
Yeah, definitely. This is something that Vanessa keeps bringing up because it is very important. We're really lucky to have a community that just produces an enormous amount of content, and we have an enormous amount of content as a company. So, but we have not put it to good use. So there's lots of things that we can do, lots of like very useful videos that we can put up on YouTube already. I think we have like 800 videos in our archives right now. So once we organize them, we're going to start using them more effectively. And towards the end of the live stream today, I'm going to start actually talking about and bring on Lamont to talk about some of the projects that we're working on as far as video content go. Cool. Also, quick question: which Dragon Ball did you prefer?
Well, I grew up on Dragon Ball Z,
Sure.
but then when Toonami started showing Dragon Ball, the original one, I liked that one better. And I still like that one better.
Yep. Yeah, when I was studying Japanese in college, I got really into Dragon Ball. I just like binged the entire series. Cool. All right, George Pig, aka Clayton, you are
All
up.
right. So hi guys. Some of you may know me, George Pig, on the server. So I'll start with my role in Refold. I'm the community manager, so I'm the super admin. I coordinate everything between the servers, help people get started. When people want to like do a project and they need like some of our infrastructure or help or project management, get them going with that. And I'm pretty active in the chat. In addition to all that, I do all the generalist stuff, any sort of random office stuff that needs to be done. I assist on the coaching. And I also help with, I'm like a one-man show with all of the support tickets and emails that come in. So it's me behind the screen. Please be kind and understand that I'm one person. And that's sort of my role with Refold. I also was hired to write language guides. So I've written like 17 quick start guides. And here in the future, Ethan and I will be sitting down and making some quick sort of like immersion reference grammars just to get you your feet on the ground, what you need to actually start understanding, what a verb looks like in the language, so on and so forth, from a comprehension perspective. So not worried about conjugating, but recognition.
Do you want to talk about your language learning history and how you came about, ended up writing 17 language guides?
Yeah, so I first got interested in languages when I was about 16. So before that, I had Spanish in my first high school for 2 years, but it wasn't anything. We didn't really learn much, and I didn't retain much. When I moved back to America from abroad, I went to a private school that offered Japanese, and I took 2 years of Japanese, and I thought I was really great because I did the best in the class, and I knew like 500 kanji, and I was like, yeah, I'm awesome. But really, reality hadn't hit me because I wasn't immersing. I wasn't an AJATer. I wasn't into anything like that. And eventually I realized I didn't know as much as I thought I did. And I dropped Japanese. I decided it was way too hard. And the first language I attempted to self-teach was Afrikaans because I heard it was easy. No gender, no conjugation. The words look a lot like English. And I ordered textbooks from South Africa, meant to be used in South African classrooms with a South African teacher. And that went about as well as you would expect because they were meant for classrooms, not self-teaching, self-education. And then after that, I took some linguistics courses. I just got really into language for the sake of language, not for like speaking or anything. And over the past, 12, 13, 14 years, I've dabbled in a lot of languages. I'm also an approved Filipino teacher, and I've taught English as a second language for over 5 years as well, and been an accent reduction coach. And I'm just generally experienced with languages. So the whole journey would take up the whole live stream, so I can't go into too many details. And as far as Refold in the future, what I'm excited for, I'm really excited to see Refold expand past Japanese. So Japanese is really unique in that it has a whole bunch of learners. It has really good media, and it has a lot of nerds learning it. So it has all of the cool tools. But if you're learning a language like, Swahili, it's still got a lot of speakers, but the media isn't there. There's not subtitles. There's not all these cool tools and corpora. So one thing I see in the community is somebody's learning a language like Thai, which is not a small language by any means, but it doesn't have the same support, and they have trouble kind of applying the Refold methodology to Thai or to another language. And I hope as the community grows, we get more people not learning Japanese so that we can better adapt the method to these languages that are less well supported. So I look forward to the community growing.
Yeah, that is not to say that we don't want the Japanese community to also grow.
we love the Japanese community. The Japanese community is the backbone of Refold. The methodology works really, really well for Japanese, and with other languages, you got to put a little bit more elbow grease into it.
Yeah, definitely. And your point about the technology is very accurate. Like, Japanese has so many cool tools for learning, and as we've been working with our coaching clients, they're learning other languages, then it's like, oh crap, we need to go like find the right tools that are going to work in these situations, and oftentimes there just isn't one available. So we sort of have to like hack something together. So being able to take that support and the infrastructure that the Japanese learner have and actually try and expand it out into various other languages is very much one of the things that we want to do, because there's no reason that Thai shouldn't have all the same materials and tools. So we definitely want to keep going down that route. And I also just want to give Clayton some props here. He knows so much about linguistics. Like half the time he's using words that I have never heard of before. Like today Ben and Clayton were talking about some accent stuff, and I was like, I don't know what half these words are. So I think one of the challenges that we're going to face is we need to take all of the knowledge that you have and simplify it down into something that is actually going to be understandable for a new learner who doesn't know anything about grammar, doesn't know any of these technical terms. But yeah, we definitely want to do that, and especially thank you for bringing up the grammar guides. One of the major problems that we see with the grammar guides that are out there on the internet is that they all come at it from this speaking perspective. They say, here is how you can convert from English to another language using these very structured rules. And as a result, the structured rules get very complicated because transferring between different languages is actually quite difficult. The rules don't really make a lot of sense. So, but as it turns out, for comprehension purposes, you don't need a lot of that stuff for grammar, because you're taking, you're just recognizing a word. You don't need to produce words. So the rules become much simpler and much easier to understand. And so we definitely want to get into the process of actually starting to produce those grammar guides that learners can absorb in maybe a week instead of like an entire book that takes months to get through. So I'm very excited to start working on that project. Cool. Well, I want to thank you all, the three of you, for hopping on and sharing your stories. Welcome to the Refold team. Excited to have you here. And folks in the chat, if you have questions for them, they're in the chat with you, so feel free to ask. So a big warm welcome to you all. And at this point, we are going to introduce Josh. So three of you all can hop off. And Ben, we'll see you later.
Bye.
Yeah. Cool.
Good to turn on my screen?
Yeah.
Okay, perfect.
You are good, yes. So I want to introduce Josh. Josh is our resident data scientist. So here at Refold, one of the things that we want to do is bring a more intelligent, strategic approach to language learning backed up by data science. And there's lots of folks in the community who have talked about these ideas. In fact, we created a whole bunch of channels just for people to talk about data science and NLP and natural language processing, for those who don't know the acronym, and methodology and all these sorts of things. And so we brought on Josh probably 9 months ago now, because we wanted to automate the deck creation process, which requires a lot of NLP analysis and some optimization problems. And so he's done a great job with that. He manages all the deck creation now at this point, and he's automated basically the whole process that could be automated. There's still humans involved, of course. But Josh, you want to talk a little bit about your background, how you came to Refold, how you found us?
Sure. Actually, how about I start with my role? That might make it easier.
Sure. Yeah, go for it.
Sure. Yeah. So basically, my role at Refold, as Ethan said, I started about 9 months ago. Actually, I originally started just helping with the FR1K deck and choosing the right words to include in the deck and the right sentences. But yeah, so currently I've been working as a data scientist, or as they like to call me, a data wizard, which I don't mind. So yeah, I spend most of my days just looking at code and spreadsheets and managing the decks. Basically, we take a lot of immersion content from, say, Netflix or books or YouTube, and we just analyze the language data, and we look at a bunch of factors and prototype things really fast, see the types of things we want to build in the future, and just discuss ideas overall. So yeah, but kind of a quick overview on how I found Refold. So for those of you who don't know, yeah, I'm Canadian. I live in Winnipeg, Manitoba. This is the part of Canada where you mostly speak English, not a lot of French here. So yeah, so I grew up speaking mostly English. Well, actually, only English. Then I went to university where it was very international. Most people spoke different languages, and I found myself actually in a research group of data mining, and everybody there spoke a different language. We had people from Brazil, Nigeria, Macau, mainland China, India, and I just felt really out of place. It's like, I'm the only person here who just does not speak another language. So that kind of got me thinking a bit, like, there's a whole part of, the human experience that I'm being shut off. I only speak one language. I don't know what it's like to converse in another culture. So yeah, I started to think about that. And funny enough, I had kind of a moment. It's very random, but I was actually at a statistical conference and I was super duper bored. And I just started to think, man, learning another language would be sick. So I was super bored. I got up and then I downloaded Duolingo and then I just spent the next 4 hours on it. So that's how I basically got started in language learning. But as for how I found Refold, I spent, tons of time on Duolingo. I had a lot of fun, 20 minutes plus a day. But when I actually started to look at real native content on YouTube or on Netflix, I just found that I couldn't understand anything. I had learned all these words, all this grammar, but it was like I was listening to white noise. So, I was like, why can't I understand my language? So I started going on YouTube and, looking up polyglots and all that. So I came across Matt vs. Japan's channel and, why you still can't understand your target language. Got into that. I watched his full 3-hour video and I was hooked. After that, I found about Refold, joined the French community, and really the rest is history.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, we are very excited to have you on board. You've done great work over the past 9 months, and you've taken the data science stuff that I was playing with and like toying around with early on, and you've just like taken it to a complete new level that I didn't even know was possible. So really awesome to see that. And we're actually about to share some of this, the data science that we're doing with you all. So I'm going to share my screen real quick, and we'll go through things. All right. All right. So let me share this. Can you see that all right, Josh?
Yeah, looks good to me.
Great. All right. So before we get into the data science thing, we need to take a step back and try and look at like, what are we actually trying to accomplish here? So our mission is to demolish the language barrier. We want to make language fluency straightforward, easy, and fun. We want to make sure that anybody can actually achieve fluency in any language of their choice. Now that's an enormous problem. There's so many different parts of it. Like if you've read the detailed guide, you know that there's so many different parts to it. And so we need to narrow our focus a little bit. And the problem that we're narrowing to first, that we think is most important, is that most language learners never make that leap from learning content to native content. It's exactly what Josh just described, where he was on Duolingo and then he got into native content and there was no way he could understand it. And so native content has this very steep learning curve, and most people never get to the point where they actually enjoy spending time with the language. And our hypothesis is that once people enjoy their time with the language, then their internal motivation will take over. They'll keep engaging with it. They'll keep learning. And so we just need to get people over this initial gap. And so if we're narrowing all of our energy towards just that. And so as I see it, there are three aspects to fixing that problem and helping people overcome that barrier. So the first is obviously to improve their comprehension of content. The more they understand, the more interesting things are going to be. The second is helping people spend time with content they don't understand and building that tolerance for ambiguity. And then the third is recommending content that is at an appropriate level for the learner that they can understand enough of to actually enjoy. So breaking each of these down, on the building comprehension side, on our end, that's the purpose of our 1K decks. We want people to be able to very quickly spin up and acquire, or rather learn a lot of vocabulary so that they can start to engage with native content, start to understand it. And then there's also all these immersion tools, which allow you to take a piece of incomprehensible input and make it comprehensible through lookups and through translations, et cetera. And there are already an enormous number of tools out there. There's already many companies and many teams working on those immersion tools. So from Refold's perspective, we don't need to reinvent the wheel here. We're just going to keep recommending people use one of the existing solutions because there are so many good ones. So I don't see us tackling that part of the problem anytime soon, just because there's already good solutions out there. The second one, building tolerance. It's important to help learners spend time with a language that they don't understand, because that can be a frustrating and difficult thing to do. You know, if you need to spend 100, 200, 500 hours with a language before you have fun with it, that's a challenge. And so it's important to change people's mindset so they understand what they're going to go through and what's important to pay attention to. It's important to help them build the habits that allow them to have consistency across a very long duration. So, you know, if you are immersing for 2 hours a day, that's 50 days in a row before you get 100, and you know, much longer to get to 500 or 1,000. So it's important to build those habits early. And then there's also an aspect of structure and accountability, making sure that people have clear direction. And so, as I mentioned earlier, we're doing this coaching. The goal is to build something that allows people to tackle these three issues so that they can actually spend time with their language, even though they don't understand. And then the third area is where the data science comes in. So if you watched my mission and vision video that I released about a year ago now, one of the things that I mentioned are content ladders, which are, you know, organizing content so that you can start from easy content and build up to difficult content over time. We want to make sure that learners have content that is at the level that is most appropriate for them, that they're most likely to understand and most likely to enjoy. And so far, we've basically been doing all of that manually. I want to give a huge shout out to all of our community members that have helped to organize a lot of this content. This is the purpose of the Google Docs, and several of the communities, including Mandarin and I believe Cantonese, have created their own Google Sheets where they just take, you know, hundreds of different pieces of content, books, etc., and they organize it from, you know, most or least difficult to most difficult. But that's a very manual process. It's not objective, it's subjective. It's based on people's personal experience and personal feelings. And so it's not really scalable. We want to move to an automated content ladder where we can objectively say how difficult a piece of content is, and then provide that to the right learner at the right time. And so there's two major challenges with building an automated content ladder. And one is analyzing the difficulty, and the second is actually sorting it to make sure that we are providing the right content in the right order. So we're going to talk about those two different things and the data science stuff that we're doing on both of those, but we're going to start with the second one, sorting. And so from here, I'm going to let Josh take over the presentation to explain how we're doing sorting.
Thanks, Ethan. So as we said, there are two major challenges. There is sorting and there's difficulty analysis. So the sorting idea is basically that we want to show content or sentences or teach words in a very optimal order so that we teach the most important things first and we kind of get more specific later on. So the sorting actually first came about from the deck development of the 1K deck. So just for those of you who might need a reminder, what is a 1T sentence? So a 1T sentence is, you know, a sentence in the language that you're studying where you know every single word except for one. So, you know, if you're learning English, it could be, my favorite sport is football. So, you know, football might be the word that you didn't know. So we actually took this logic and we put it into the 1K decks where we want to sort the example sentences so that words learned earlier are used in example sentences further down the line to make it really nice and easy, you know, as they progress through the deck. The basic structure, which we'll show shortly, is that you learn words early on, and this unlocks cards with example sentences later on in the deck, which are 1T. And those of you who might be Japanese learners, this is a kind of a version of Morphman, but a little bit more sophisticated. We use a little bit more math, and it's actually hopefully going to be less technical in the future. But yeah, if we just go back to that next slide. So this is a little diagram from the Gen 1K, which has not been released yet. So if you look on the left-hand side, the left column, we see 4 words that we're going to teach: sorry, what, you, and do. So you learn those very early on, and then what happens is it unlocks the card later on in the deck, which is say. So, sorry, what did you say? So going back to the 1T definition, we see that sorry, what did you say is actually a 1T sentence where say is the new word. So actually, it doesn't even stop there, though. So once you learn the word say, it then unlocks 3 further cards down the deck, which is never, as, and yes. So never, we see, I never said that. Do as he says, and did he say yes or no? So we just have that nice 1T structure that we've been ordering our decks with. But how does this actually look, under the hood, like the dirty details? Go to the next slide here. So we have a little bit of an animation to show you. It's going to be a little bit complicated, but I'll just walk you through it really quick. Each of those blue dots represents a card. We draw the relationships between words and example sentences, and then we go and sort it as so. So hopefully if you could see that all right. Do we have a picture of that last slide?
Yeah, I've got them back to back.
Cool. Yeah, so we started off here with all the cards. Again, they're blue dots, and we draw lines between them, relationships, between the words and the example sentences, and then we sort it. So we end up with that last figure. So here is basically what the Gen 1K looks like, kind of in the background, like just the very dirty details. So this is actually the first 100 cards of the Gen 1K. The actual thing is 10 times bigger because it's 1,000 cards. But at the very top, these are the first cards that we teach. These are very important words such as B. Actually, B is the very top one, the very peak of this mountain range. You have B, we have to, we have you, we have and then as we go down to the very bottom, these are the more rare words that are unlocked after you study the first couple words. So we have this really nice structure that came out of this in the end.
Yeah. Very cool. Very cool to see these diagrams. I played with the graphing software for like many hours trying to get something pretty to work, and I could not get it to work. So I'm glad Josh was able to.
Yeah,
cool.
honestly,
So,
go ahead. Yeah, I was just gonna say, solving that problem was it was a really difficult math problem, and my head was just hurting the entire time. But we got it going. Yeah.
yeah. So we can take these same principles of sorting. Cards are very simple; they're one individual sentence, but we can take the same principles and apply it to bigger pieces of content. And we're planning to do that much more in the coming weeks or coming months, rather. But in order for us to do that, we have to look at another factor, which is the difficulty of content. And so I forget, Josh, do you want to do this or do you want me to do this one?
Yeah, sure, I can try.
Okay.
And then maybe you can add context if you want.
Yeah, sure.
Sure. So the next part, so we had the 2 challenges again, sorting and difficulty analysis. But one of the things that comes about is, how many words do I actually need to know before I can start enjoying my immersion content? So we've been basing a lot of our preliminary studies off of Krashen's idea of extensive reading. This is basically the idea that acquiring language becomes, much more comfortable, fun, and effective once you can recognize about 98% of words in your immersion. This is also what we're kind of calling the fun zone, because it's, when things become fun. So our challenge with difficulty analysis here is we want to recommend and identify content that is 90% word coverage for learners, especially new learners. But yeah, so that actually leads us to our next part, though. So, actually, how do we define a word in the first place? So there are many ways you can view words, and obviously there's linguistic debate about this, but we're actually going to ignore a good chunk of that and kind of get into a more pragmatic version of it. So one way to look at words is through the idea of word forms or inflections. Sometimes these are also known as conjugations. These are just specific usages of words, like we have an example in English of run, running, and ran. Do you want to run? They are running. He ran, stuff like that. So, one way that language tools actually count words is they count every single inflection. So Duolingo, Link, and Morphman use word forms. They count run, running, and ran all as different words. And actually, I have some data for you here. So as I mentioned, about 2 years ago, I started with Duolingo, and that was my main tool. So here, kind of the main word here is dormir, which means to sleep. So it has my word data, all the words and things I know. And we can see it actually just counts conjugations over and over again. We have, I was sleeping, they are sleeping, you are sleeping, we are sleeping. So it just has a very bloated definition of a word. When you ask Duolingo, like, how many words do I know? It's basically counting every single inflection, and it thinks that you need to practice every single form of a word. So if we follow this logic, how many words do we actually need to study before we get into the fun zone, or the 98% coverage zone? So we actually took, we've done a bunch of data analysis on different shows and such, but we chose this one for this presentation, which is, forgive me, Ethan, but La Casa de las Flores.
Close enough.
Yeah, perfect. Okay, awesome. Yeah, so this is a slice of life show in Spanish. And we find that you need to study about the 10,000 most common words or inflections before you hit 98% coverage over the fun zone. So that is a lot of words you need to study before it gets easier.
And this is just for one episode.
Just for one episode, yeah, that's right. Episode 13.
Yeah. But, this is sort of like a naive idea, right? Humans are pretty good at pattern matching. We don't need to study all of these different inflections. We can learn like a rule and then apply it to a bunch of different words and then recognize those words. So here's an example from Spanish, correr y comer. So one of those is to run, the other one is to eat, but there's no regularities in their conjugations. They're very normal and regular, which means that if you see comemos and corremos already, then you can, reverse engineer back to the root word, which is comer. So we don't really want to count forms because our brains are capable of doing this reverse, working backwards to the root form.
Yeah, so that's the basic idea. It's like, if you have, basic idea of grammar, or you have kind of a nice intuition for that, if you just learn the basic form of the word, you immediately unlock all the other forms. I was running, I am running, I will run. This all just comes naturally through acquisition. So instead, if we don't study every single inflection and we just focus on root words, and we assume that you can acquire the inflections and the conjugations, how many words do you need to study to reach the same amount of coverage in the same content? So if we look at the orange curve to the left, it shows us that in order to reach 98% comprehension, or word coverage rather, it only takes about 4,000 to 5,000 words. So if we compare that with what we had originally, where we're studying every single inflection, that's actually a reduction of half or more. So that's far less words that you need to study now.
Yep, and we actually took this a step further. So we use a program to actually identify root words from content. But we've had to do a lot of manual cleanup because the computers make mistakes. And most of the natural language processing pipelines, they're really not built for language learning. They're really built for translation between computers. And so we have had to go through and manually correct a lot of this work. And one of the things that we noticed is that the lemmatizers actually treat certain words as different roots, even though they're clearly the same word or from the same derivation. So an example here is runner versus run. One of those is a noun, one of those is a verb. And so the lemmatizer actually treats those as two separate things. And so we've gone through by hand and manually grouped all of those things into word families. And that gives us about another 5 to 10% optimization, depending on the language. And then the other aspect is that some of the languages are much more poorly supported. So Thai and Korean seem to have really poor lemmatizers. And so we've had to go through and manually do a lot of fixing up to account for the difficulties that we've had with those automated programs.
For sure. And the next part, so we started off with inflections, studying every form of the word, and then we moved on to the idea of just studying the root words, and then letting your brain kind of figure out the patterns on its own. But one thing we haven't taken into account yet is native language optimization. So just to take me as an example, so I speak English, but I'm learning French. To people who are familiar with French at all, you'll know that there are just tons of words that English and French share together. These are words that you don't need to study. Enfant or idée, infant or idea. you don't actually need to make flashcards for these. You don't need to study them or memorize them. They're very easily acquired. So now what if we take this into account? So cognates and loanwords, they speed up the process quite a bit. We've been seeing, in our own, oh, actually, can we go back one? Sorry, my bad. Sure. Yeah, we've been seeing in Refold that, people who study languages that are similar to English, like Spanish or French, we make progress much faster than people who study things like Japanese or Arabic. And this is because we have like a really nice head start. There's so many words that we already basically know. But unfortunately, there's no current collection of cognates or loanwords on the internet that kind of follows a good definition for language learners. So we've actually gone through ourselves and done a lot of this categorization and identified a lot of cognates. We can go to the next slide. Cool. So as we can see, so this is a graph of the English cognates and loanwords in different languages. So the French and the Spanish, this was largely done kind of internally by Ethan and I. Then Italian, German, and Korean, we actually hired some advanced language learners to go through lists and basically label any word that is very similar to English or actually the exact same. So, as we can see with French, as I mentioned earlier, tons and tons of cognates. Like we just share an absolutely breathtaking amount of vocabulary, similar to Spanish. With Korean, it's obviously much less. Korean and English, those languages did not really develop alongside each other. There wasn't a lot of interaction throughout history, but they do have loan words. I think one example is like the word for motel or team. Like those are just shared because of the dominance of English or the spread of English and taking loan words and such, but much less in Korean.
Yep. And then I just want to highlight that our analysis of Italian is still in progress, so this number is probably going to go up.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Yeah, we actually expect French, Spanish, and Italian to be kind of similar, but French taking the lead a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Cool. So again, just to review where we started, we go from studying every single inflection of the common words to just studying the root words. But now if we actually account for cognates and say, you don't need to study those either, you can just pick those up from immersion and just kind of acquiring them. If we look at the blue curve, this is now if we assume that you don't need to study cognates and you don't need to study inflections. So we find that to get to 98% word coverage in the same piece of content, it now takes about 3,000 words, which is a further reduction of, about 2,000 to 3,000 from just the root word idea. So we just see massive reductions in the amount of words you actually need to study before immersion starts becoming fun.
Yeah, so word coverage is the first analysis that we've run through. And with this, we can identify which pieces of content are going to be easier for learners, depending on their native language, et cetera. But we have tons of other ideas for how we want to do difficulty analyses. We started some of those. So for example, word coverage analysis does not tell us what the audio quality of the video is, for instance. So if people are mumbling, if people are speaking fast, there's no way for word coverage to take that into account. We have some ideas of how we want to tackle that. But in order for us to do that, we need to analyze lots and lots of content. We've already been analyzing thousands and thousands of YouTube videos because that's just a really great free resource that everybody has access to. And so we're starting there. And so this is our first attempt at trying to build this automated content ladder. And one of the fun things that we did when we were going through YouTube is we analyzed a couple channels that you might see as familiar. So here's a word cloud from a channel. I want you to guess whose channel this is.
Yeah.
So
pretty hard.
Yeah, no, super hard, right? So this is Matt versus Japan's channel. And surprise, surprise, the most important, biggest word is immersion. Shocking.
I'm noticing a theme here. Yeah.
Yeah, shocking. And then this one over here is, I'm guessing you can guess this, but this is Days of French and Swedish. This is Lamont's channel. So he really likes Swedish, according to this list. So just some fun little word graphs to share with the community. But yeah, so that is basically what we've been working on over the past few months. We have lots of other pieces that we're trying to integrate into this process. We have tons of new ideas going forward. And so I want to just thank Josh for all the hard work that he's put in to build out some of these ideas. We're excited to continue down this process. We really want to optimize the process of learning a language. And there are all of these neat little tricks that we can do to help identify what that optimization looks like for learners. And so the easier we can make it to overcome this this barrier to understand native comprehension, the more success there's going to be in language learners. That's our hypothesis. That is what we fundamentally believe as a company and as a community. And so that is the direction that we are taking this down. So I just want to say, give a big shout out to Josh for all of his hard work. Thank you so much. And do you have any last minute things you want to talk about?
Sure. Yeah. I just want to say thanks, Ethan. And I'm really excited and looking forward to the type of stuff we're going to be building. Because, Ethan and I and the rest of the team, we actually are immersion learners who really do study languages using Refold. Really what we want to be building in the future are things that we ourselves would have liked to have when we started learning languages. So I'm really looking forward to helping pave the way for future immersion learners and hopefully making it easier for myself as well.
Yeah. What you said about making it easier, or the things that we wish we had. This whole process of categorizing cognates started because I was not sure which words to study, and I was doing some sentence mining, but didn't really know if it was doing the right thing. So I just picked up a frequency list, 5,000 words, and I went through and just categorized everything, so I knew what I should be studying. And of those 5,000 words, I got about 450 that I didn't know. But learning those 450 actually drastically improved my comprehension. And so we want to make sure that that is something that everybody has access to, that nobody else has to go through that process of doing that categorization and doing that selection themselves. They can just start learning, and we will give you the optimized path forward. So really excited to see all of these projects come to fruition.
Awesome. Me too. And thanks again.
Absolutely. Cool. All right. So we're making progress here. So our next segment that's coming up, we're going to bring on Matt versus Japan. Many of you know him. He's the king. So Matt, are you on the call?
Yes.
All right. Cool. Great to see you.
Good to see you.
Yeah. Thanks for showing up on a Saturday. Appreciate it.
Oh yeah, of course. I literally laughed out loud when you showed the word map of my channel. You have to send me that later. I have to put that on Twitter.
Yeah. It's funny. Matt is focused on the content side of things, and so we've been doing all this data science stuff, and I haven't really been sharing it broadly. So this is actually Matt's first look at all the data science work that we're doing. I'm curious if you have any first impressions.
I mean, yeah, very cool. I mean, it's kind of like you're taking a lot of stuff that we talked about quite a while back, and finally it's becoming reality, finally materializing. And I think that's really cool to see. I mean, yeah, I think a lot of these ideas initially are things that programmers in the community have talked about here and there, but haven't really been put into action. And so, yeah, it's cool to see finally someone's going to take that idea that everyone knew we could do, but actually do it for the first time and put it into a form that actually will eventually help people in a straightforward way.
Yeah, absolutely. And I do want to give credit to the people who have already built awesome things for the community and have solved parts of these problems, because it serves as inspiration for things that we can do. But we want to take all of those tools that are currently open source tools that you need to install all sorts of stuff for and configure it. We want to make it straightforward and smooth process to use them. And so big shout out to all the people who have come before us. We're standing on the shoulders of giants. Cool. So Matt, it's funny, I was looking at my journal. So I have a daily journal over the course of 5 years, and it shows me the same day from the previous years. And we are right at the 2-year mark from the very first time that we talked.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah, it is crazy to think. It's funny. It feels like it was such a long 2 years, but at the same time, it feels like it flew by.
Yeah. It's always kind of like that. In some sense, it kind of feels like, man, it's only been 2 years. So much has happened in that time.
Yep.
But at the same time, yeah, the crazy thing is that now I'm 27, and when I think back of now the age of 25 feels so young, So to think back of like, oh, I was only 25, I was like a little youngling back then.
Yeah.
Of course, in reality, 2 years, it's all relative. In some ways, it's long. Sometimes, in most ways, it's not that long. But yeah, it feels like so much has happened.
Yep. Yeah, I remember the first time we talked, I was really nervous because I had been watching your Q&A videos, and like you had inspired me to like completely change my language learning routine. And so you like hopped off of the call, and I was like, my hands were sweating and everything, and I prepared this like whole presentation of all the things I wanted to share. I was like super nervous.
You made a very good first impression. I never would have known that you were nervous. It was fun.
Yeah. Cool. So, looking back over the past 2 years, we've done a lot of stuff. And I'm curious, sort of looking at everything that we've done, what do you feel most proud of? What are the things that you really appreciate that we've done?
For me, it has to be the initial guide that we wrote, like the actual first like stages from right from the beginning up till stage 3. That's the thing that I was the most direct a part of. Like that was really back when we were very first just getting started. And it was really just me and you just grinding away. And I remember it was really challenging at the time, but I have pretty fond memories of like how many back and forths on, I'd try to explain the idea to you and you write up a draft and then I'd be like, no, it's a little bit different in this way. It's so many back and forth. And then just the wording, trying to like get the wording in a good way. And it felt like that work really needed to be done. And for me, that was kind of the work that I always had kind of been continually putting off. It's the thing that never really actualized in MIA because I never just sat down and grinded to like get it out. And we finally did that. And now it's really nice that I've been able to say ever since then, like when someone gets into my channel and they're like, okay, I like it. I get all these individual pieces of information. How do I put it together? Like, what do I actually do? To be able to just say like, oh, well, you can go and read this guide, even though in reality it's too long. So maybe most people don't read it. At least I can say, well, if you really want to, you can read it because it's there. And sure. That feels really good.
Yeah, no, I also want to shout out and make sure we don't forget Katrina because she also helped a lot with.
Oh yeah. No, that's true. That's true. Actually, we did have some. Yeah, we actually did have some help. Shouldn't have said that it was just me and you.
Yeah, but it was really interesting getting into it because when we started that process, I personally needed the guide. I was looking at my own language learning and I was just like itching every time. I was like, come on, Matt, like write more guides. I need to understand how this process works. And so being able to be a part of that process, I remember sitting down and so I use a mind mapping software. I'm not sure if people know what that is, but it's a way to think about things. And Matt and I sat down and I created this mind map that was just like, I don't know, it must have been like 500 nodes on the tree. And we were just like constantly rearranging things. And like the original model that we had ended up like getting rearranged a whole bunch of times. It was like a really intense project, really fun though, for me, because like this is exactly what I like to do. So I was really happy with the result there too. On my end, for the past 2 years, I actually think for me, the community is the most important and impactful thing that we've created. Because it's, immersion learning is it can be a very lonely process, and surrounding yourself and having access to people who've gone through it before and know what it's like and can provide feedback and guidance is really, really important in terms of like helping people to maintain their motivation and maintain their learning long term. And so for me, I would have to say the community, definitely.
Yeah, very cool.
Yeah. So
I just really something that never really existed, right? A real community, a comprehensive, actual monitored like community for immersion learners, especially with different languages. Like, we had the prototype beforehand, like from my old Patreon and stuff like that. But of course it was like everyone was only learning Japanese. The vibe was really bad. It was like very elitist. So I think, really come a long way when we think back to
absolutely.
Those old days.
And I really want to thank all the moderators that have helped do that. Like we have you can go check out the website. You can see all the moderators for all the different servers. There's tons of them. I think we probably have like 50 different moderators just helping to run the servers because it's just an enormous task to do every single day. So I want to thank all of them. And I also want to thank you because I have had a great time working on all of these different projects and working on the roadmap. And without you, I would not have had my own revelations around how to learn a language, and we would not have been able to create this community and this company. So Really appreciate all of
Oh,
that.
my pleasure. Yeah, same for me. Yeah, of course. None of this would have existed, of course, without you as well. So
Yeah, cool. So Matt's got some big news. You wanna share it?
yes. So I'm finally moving to Japan.
Woo!
So
It's been a long time coming.
yes, way too long. Like, yeah, it's been literally 10 years since I was in Japan. Yeah, so I went to Japan for my study abroad, my study abroad that I went on when I still sucked at Japanese and had an awful time. That was 2012. I think I left in March of 2012. And then I came back September of 2012. So 10 years ago today, I was in Japan. In fact, the summer period when I was in Japan was like the only period that was fun because I didn't have to go to school and I like temporarily was staying with cool host parents. So right about now, a year ago, I was getting drunk for the first time in my life on sake. Actually, the only good memories I have in Japan. But anyway, yeah, as soon as everything finally lined up and it's finally like, okay, I'm actually going to Japan now, it really hit me like, man, why did I wait so long? I should have went way earlier. And I kind of wish I had, but at the same time, things play out how they play out. And of course, there are many reasons why, it ended up being now. But hey, I think definitely not too late in any sense. And
no, yeah, you got plenty of time.
Yeah, yeah.
And how does it feel? Like, are you excited? Are you overwhelmed? Are you worried? Like, how does it feel?
I'm mostly just like super excited. Like, I just can't wait. I have like pretty much nothing but positive emotions and thoughts towards this thing. Like, I'm not really nervous at all. I mean, I have the sense that like right at the end when I'm like boarding the plane, I will probably, feel it'll be hard to say goodbye to my family and things like that. Like, I actually remember on my other study abroad 10 years ago, the same thing where like I felt totally fine and ready to go. And then like 5 minutes before I get in the car to drive to the airport, I like just suddenly started sobbing because it just like hit me. Like, it's like, oh, this is like a real good saying goodbye to my family, So probably a similar thing will happen. But right now I just feel like super excited, like counting down the days and can't wait to go.
Yeah, I know exactly what you mean. That like last moment before you get on the plane or like on the way to the airport, you're like, oh, stomach drop. Like this is a big change.
Yeah, but then right once the plane's actually taken off and you're there, then normally it's like it's all back to the
definitely. Yeah. So I mean, you have been actively studying Japanese for how long now? 9 years?
Well, it depends if you want to count those 2 years before I actually started immersion. Of course, I don't like to count those, but probably should count them, in which case it's like 12 years about.
Yeah. Okay. Got it.
It's crazy.
And like, you get access to the language and you have access to culture through YouTube and whatnot. But how does it feel to, do you think that it's going to be like still a big culture shock, or do you feel like you've actually been able to absorb the culture from the media?
That's a good question. I mean, my first reaction was, no, there's not going to be culture shock. But immediately after that, I was like, wait, though, can you be so sure? I mean, I actually thought the same thing when I went to Japan 10 years ago. Sure. Obviously, I know way more about Japan. I'm way more mature than I was 10 years ago. But I think when I think really, really rationally about it, like culture shock is probably a very visceral thing that can't be avoided no matter how much knowledge you have about the country and the culture. But I don't know. I mean, I think the way that I have it kind of lined up is for the first couple of weeks, I'm really planning on pretty much just having fun, hanging out with friends, going to different places, meeting up with all the people who I've connected with online, of course, spending time with my girlfriend. And so it's hard to imagine that that's going to be anything less than just like having my life. But I don't know. Maybe, I mean, they say there's the periods you go through, right? It's like honeymoon period. And then then that's when the culture shock hits and then it goes back up. So maybe there'll be some things a couple months in that I could see like, yeah, getting irritated about certain things about, how much the ATM fees are and things like that. But I do think that it's going to be a lot less compared to, most people who go to Japan for the first or second time.
Yeah. I remember when we were outlining stage 4 and we had this section about culture and we're like, man, we had like lots of ideas for it, but it's like, how do you actually describe how to adapt to a foreign culture without just going to the country?
Yeah. There's
Like, I
definitely
feel
a
like
lot of
there's-
things that, I mean, for a while now, there's kind of been many aspects where I just kind of felt like, what's the point of trying to acquire certain aspects of the culture without living there? Because even though it may be possible, it's like just such an uphill battle. It's so impractical that why even? And also, like, what's the benefit of it? It's like, if you're in America, even if you're spending time with Japanese people, for example, they're not going to expect you to act Japanese. It's like when you're in Japan and you're speaking fluent Japanese, that if your cultural understanding doesn't follow, then you're probably going to, things aren't going to be so smooth. So I think there's definitely going to be a lot of cultural learning. I think I'm pretty confident in my mindset. Like I'm going to be very humble when I go. I'm not going to like have this arrogant, like, oh, I already mastered this mindset. That's actually kind of what I had 10 years ago.
It's very Japanese of you.
Yeah, definitely bit me in the ass. Maybe that's one thing I was able to learn from my immersion. But I definitely want to be really humble. I'm going to ask all my friends I make for like as honest feedback as it's possible to get from a Japanese friend about not just language, but cultural and everything. So
yeah. Do you have any like specific goals that you want to accomplish while you're there?
I mean, I go back and forth on this. I mean, on one hand, one big goal I have is like I want to really get to 100% native level in Japanese. Like I want to go. I think I've kind of come as far as you can really come without living in the country, but there's definitely another level that is possible if you really live completely immersed in the culture. So that's definitely my goal that I have. The only thing that I guess when I said I go back and forth on is kind of like the timeline, because part of me wants to go to Japan and just like work really hard on Japanese there, and part of me feels like maybe I should just enjoy myself for a while because it's been a long time coming, and it's probably a lot of fun to be had. So
yeah,
probably it's gonna be a matter of trying to balance those two, I guess.
Yeah, all work and no play. You gotta go and like actually enjoy yourself.
Yeah, I feel like I kind of earned that after my like all those years in my cave, just studying Japanese by myself. So
yep. Yeah, it's time to step out into the world, touch grass, all that stuff. Cool. What are you most excited for?
So it's hard to pick like one thing. I mean,
all right, top three.
I mean, getting to hang out with my girlfriend in person all the time. That's definitely like,
oh sure, yeah,
like a really big one on the list. And some of them actually are like my other really close friends that I talk to all the time are in Japan. So getting to just like regularly like go and just like go and get like amazing Japanese food with a Japanese friend, like casually, whenever I want. Just sounds like super fun. And also all the, getting to meet other creators and things like that. And also just, getting to fully immerse myself in Japanese. And, like I'm looking forward to those experiences where I like talk to my family and I'm stumbling over English because I like haven't spoken English in like a while, like things like that as well.
Yeah, when I came back from South America after 6 months, I definitely was like really clumsy with English for a bit. There were like words that were constantly on the tip of my tongue, and there were even days when I was like, I'm like speaking with a Spanish accent in English. So yeah, I think you will experience that.
Yeah, I'm like looking forward to it, and at the same time, like as someone who will sometimes makes content, maybe it's not ideal, but it'll work out in the end, I'm sure.
Yeah, definitely. And you mentioned food. What food are you most excited to try, like and dig Japanese food?
Well, I know I want to go to like a really like one of those famous like ramen places. I know which one I want to go to. Like they call it like Jiroke ramen. Want to go there. I'm also just looking forward to being able to get like good Japanese food at like the konbini like anytime. When I was in Japan, I loved the onigiris that they have at the konbini, that you can just get them anytime and eat them immediately, and they're really good. Like I'm looking forward to that a lot as well. And I mean, right now the yen is super weak, which is not good for Japanese people, but very good for me because my money is in dollars. So some of my friends in Japan have been telling me that my American friends in Japan have been saying that food is actually just really cheap in Japan. So you can, just for like $5, you can get like really good, like real authentic Japanese food. So like I food is something I haven't really explored that much as I've been in Japan. So I want to explore everything that's out there. And like, it's actually, even language wise, one of my weak spots is like talking about food. Like there's lots of dishes I don't know, or
it's just like a domain you don't know enough about.
I mean, I've never really been that interested in it. And it's like studying Japanese food for me would have been looking at pictures and making flashcards. And that just doesn't feel like the right way to like study food. So it feels like, okay,
That's
now will be the perfect time to get that domain down of the.
Yeah. Smell and taste definitely produce
Yeah.
stronger memories.
Yeah, I think so.
It'd be hard to integrate that into Anki, I think.
Yeah, that would. So hopefully, yeah. Finally, this one pocket of ignorance that's always bugged me is I lost my chance to get rid of that. So.
Yeah, definitely. I'm jealous. I have always wanted to go to Japan ever since I studied it in high school. I've never made it, and it's definitely on my bucket list. But I feel like I got to do a little language learning before I go.
Yeah, I mean, of course, you don't have to, but
that's true.
I guess
it would be nice.
As the CEO of Refold, maybe it would be the right thing to do.
Maybe, yeah.
There's definitely an argument to be made. Yeah, but you definitely hope. Yeah, hopefully we can meet up in Japan one time. That's kind of the funny thing too, is that like there's a lot of American friends who have made online, and I'm probably going to meet them for the first time in Japan. Mm-hmm. And that's actually one of the things why I think it's really cool is that like for a while now that I've kind of had in the back of my mind, I'm going to go to Japan one day. A lot of my online friends I've kind of known like, yeah, one day we're going to both be in Japan. And we're going to be able to like actually hang out. And that's going to be really cool. Just because like Japan is, well, first of all, it's a lot smaller than the US. And I mean, that's the biggest reason, but it's also very connected. So it's like, if you're in Japan, no matter where you are, no matter like if you're in Japan, I'm in Japan, no matter where you are, no matter where I are, we are going to be able to hang out and it's not going to be too big of a deal. Whereas, in America, like to go down to California, you have to hop on an airplane, it's kind of a much bigger deal than it would be in Japan.
Right.
So it's just kind of funny that it's like, there's people who are like 1 or 2 states over, but we don't actually get to hang out until we're both in Japan. So I'm looking forward to Japan, not only as a place to meet my Japanese friends, but a place to meet my friends from all around the world, right? Including other people, like my British friends I made, friends from, South Africa. So I have this cool vision of it's like the meeting place of all the weebs. We finally get to hang out together in Japan.
Yeah, it's a bit ironic that you're like, you all go to one place to meet up.
Yeah. But it's I'm thankful for it.
Yeah, definitely. Cool. So the one thing that we want to talk about here is so Matt, you've been in the forefront of extending immersion learning methodologies for 5 years now, 6 years through YouTube. You've been spending so long learning Japanese, and your YouTube videos have really inspired so many people. I would say hundreds of thousands, if not maybe 1 million people, to change their style of learning. And like that's an enormous accomplishment. You've been really at the forefront of this, and over the past 5-6 years, you've seen the more intense learning communities really transition the way they talk about learning. And I credit a lot of that to you. Of course, there's other people that influence that. Like, I think like Steve Kaufman does a really good job sharing those ideas. But I think, I credit you as being one of the very early adopters and one of the early promoters of these ideas. And so I think the entire community really owes a debt of gratitude to you, and myself included.
Oh, thank you.
And so I just want to thank you for changing the entire way that I think about language learning, because it took me a long time to find your content, and it really changed the way that I thought about things.
Oh yeah, it's very, very surreal.
Yeah. And so we do have some bittersweet news, which is that, Matt is going to Japan. He wants to enjoy his life there. And so he's taking a step back from being a public figure. Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, I mean, kind of just like you said. I mean, not that I've been too active very recently anyway, but I definitely, want to take some time to just fully enjoy my life, not worry about having to turn it into a video or things like that. When I hang out with people, not have to have my first thought be, like let's film a video or things like that. And I also want to really focus on Japanese and really live fully in Japanese. And most of my content creation is in English, actually. So that's kind of the thoughts.
Yeah, I remember you made that video with Shalma, and you and I were talking about it, and like what that experience was like. And you were going into all these details of like, it looks very nonchalant and it looks very casual when you're watching the video, but you were talking about like all of the different things you have to do in order to like make that content and all the stuff that's behind the scenes. And it just seems like so much work.
Yeah, definitely.
To like get that good footage. As being a vlogger, you're constantly thinking about how do I create the best video? How do I, set up my camera? How do I get the best audio? How do I like have the best ideas and share these stories and experiences? And the ironic part is that, you're sharing these experiences with people online so that they can, live viscerally through you, but you're not actually having the experience at all.
Yeah.
Because you're creating content. And so I totally appreciate that you want to be present in your experience. You want to actually enjoy it.
Yeah. And I think the other thing is that like a lot of people might imagine like, oh, there's so many new videos like you could make if you actually went to Japan. But the thing that I am most interested in sharing with people has always been ideas and less so sharing experiences. Like I think a lot of vloggers, what they're really doing is sharing experiences that people can like, what's that word, vicariously, have that experience. And I think that's really cool, but that's just never like really interests me personally that much. I've never kind of felt like, oh, I want to share this experience. I've always felt like I need to share this idea. Like it's when I have the idea in my head that I'm like, this is what I need to tell the world. And I think that when I go to Japan and I live in Japan for a period of time, I'll probably get lots of ideas I'll eventually want to share. And so for one day I will, want to share those. But for that initial period, until I actually have the ideas, I want to just live my life and let the ideas come, I guess you could say.
Yeah, totally.
I don't gather my thoughts.
Yeah, it's funny. We get requests for like, when is Matt going to do like another white guy speaks Japanese video? Because people do love it, right? It's like really entertaining content, and it gets the most views. But it's never been something you've been particularly interested in.
Yeah, and actually, it's kind of funny because I've really only done that. I mean, we could, if you want to be straight, like 4 times, right? There is like 2 in VR chat, 1 in New York, and then 1 I did here in Portland. And the funny thing is that those are like some of my most viewed videos now because of the nature of them. And recently now, when I get introduced on like podcasts, when I'm like a guest on a podcast, they'll introduce me as like, yeah, he does all types of content. He has content where he goes out and talks to people. He has content where he talks about like the ideas. And they talk about it as if it's like 50-50. Whereas to me, it's like, no, it's like 99-1. Like I just did that a couple times. That's like not my thing at all. But people, I mean, it's also my fault because I have my most recent video like that as like the channel trailer. Like when you click on my channel, it's the first thing you see. Because it is the most kind of eye-catching. Like if someone clicks on my channel, I still think that's like the video that will make it most likely they'll stay long enough to actually hear some of my ideas. But that's definitely not who I ever wanted to be or have any interest in being.
Yeah, I think the YouTube algorithm definitely like prioritize and preferences clickbait and white guys.
Yeah, I mean that's just really a reflection of human psychology, right? The algorithm prioritizes what people click on and what people watch, and of course, it's hard to beat that kind of dopamine boost of It's actually really similar to I think like shonen anime. Like shonen anime, there's something I enjoy shonen anime myself. There's something that it like touches something very deep in the psychology of particularly males, but some females too, of just like that badass character archetype of like the overpowered main character, and he's gonna win because he's overpowered, but you still feel so vindicated when he wins anyway, and you want to see him win over and over and over. It just feels so good. It's like a similar thing of like, oh, white guy, it's basically like real life Tom Cruise in Last Samurai. Like foreigner masters the language and shocks the native speakers. There's something very visceral about it. So yeah, it's like hard to beat that with like, let me explain to you the logic behind how land clearance acquisition works.
Yeah, here's like a 20-minute video essay.
Yeah. Of course, many people, most of my real fans enjoy the theory content much more, and they don't really care for the other content.
Yeah, definitely.
Although I mean, of course, I think a lot of people like both. They like it occasionally, right? Like they wouldn't want to see me go out and talk to Japanese people every single day, but every once in a while, just a reminder of like, oh, this is this is what might be waiting for you if you keep on going.
Yep.
But
it's like a way to bring people in and to like expose them to the ideas afterwards. And I will say, like, the video essays were, those are my favorite part, because I actually want to understand your ideas, and I actually want to understand, how can I incorporate those ideas into my life, and why have I been struggling? Because, I struggled with language learning for so long before I found your channel. And there's some videos that I still, to this day, like, why you still can't understand your target language. The persistent puzzles one that you did last year, that was a great video. And those are key pieces that are like required watching for language learners.
Yeah, those are the ones I'm the most proud of too. I mean, those are the ones I feel like I really contributed something unique to me. Whereas, the white guy speaks Japanese is kind of like lots of people could make that. But I think those video essays are kind of like, I mean, of course, other people have had similar ideas, but I have a unique way, I think, of just putting it into words. And for some people, I know that really resonates. And so it really feels like, oh, this is something only I could create. And I'm providing real value more than just a momentary dopamine boost. So those are always my favorite as well. And in the future, I definitely eventually like to make more of those as well.
Yeah, definitely makes sense. Cool. So all of that is to say that Matt is going to be taking a step back from making Refold videos and contributing, so he can actually focus on his time in Japan. And so things like the monthly Q&As, we're going to stop doing those. I'm going to talk about in a second what they're going to be replaced by. And the Q&As in particular, I think are a funny thing because when we initially launched, you approached me and were like, aren't you worried that like the Q&As are going to become obsolete if we like write all of this guys and we set up this community with like Q&A sections and like have members of the community answering? Like, don't you think the Q&As that we do are going to be obsolete? And I was like, yes, that's the point. We want them to become obsolete over time. We want it to get to the point where like you're always working yourself out of a job, right? You're creating things that don't require additional effort but still provide the same value. And that is like fundamentally how you structure a business. And so I think we've reached that point where we have so much Q&A content. I think there's like we analyzed, I think it's close to 800 Q&A questions in the archive. And it's like, I think we've answered the questions. I think we've got this one like nailed down.
Yeah, I'm starting to feel like more than half of the talking I've done in my life is like Q&A videos I've done about like how to learn languages. It's very possible.
Yeah, I mean, definitely. If you look at just like the number of hours that you've been on film, it's probably either majority or like 50%.
I think it's the majority. Yeah, because I mean, they're like an hour long of me just sitting and talking nonstop, and I pumped those out for years now. I think like maybe close to 4 years. I mean, at first it was every other week. It went to every month, but there's still like so many of them. It's crazy to think. I mean, I think I attribute a lot of my current like ability to speak English coherently to all the practice I got just nonstop talking with no edits for an hour every other week. So
yeah, definitely. It's definitely good practice. Cool. All right. Well, I'm going to move on to start talking about like how we're going to be restructuring the Patreon and what we're going to be doing as a business and the future stuff that we're going to be working on. So I just want to say thank you so much for everything that you've done to help Refold become what it is today. I'm really excited for where we're going, and we could not have gotten to where we are now without the foundation that you built. So huge thanks.
Yeah, my pleasure.
Yeah, and great to see you.
You too.
Have a great trip to Japan.
Thank you. Fun talking. Cool.
All right. Thank you, Matt. So the next thing we're going to be talking about is how we're going to be restructuring the Patreon. So I'm going to start out by talking a little bit about what the Patreon currently does and why that's it's not structured properly right now. And then we're going to move on into the future projects and the future plans that we have. And I'm going to bring on Lamont to talk a little bit about some of the video things that we're going to be doing. So I'm going to share my screen once again. This is the last presentation. So thank you for bearing with. I know not everybody likes presentations, but they're very useful for conveying stories and meaning. So, all right, Patreon changes. So inherently there's a conflict with Patreon. And this is something we knew day one because there was this question of like, as a patron, is my money going towards producing free content for learners, or is my money going towards building a private company called Refold? And so there was always that tension. And we had some people who, really didn't want us to be spending money on the company side of things, and other people who were like, no, we really want you to provide us a service as a business. And so this tension really just made the Patreon sort of like a mess. It's not really built to do both of those things simultaneously. So we decided to just ask people like what they wanted. And so of our current patrons, the vast majority of them really want us to be creating free content. And then 35%, which is still significant, they want us to be offering an actual service and products that they pay for through Patreon. And looking at former patrons, it's about 50-50. So, half of them want us to be producing free content for learners and helping learners to learn more effectively. And 50% are like, no, I want you to help me specifically learn a language, and I will pay you for that. And so what we decided to do is we're actually just going to split it entirely. Patreon is just going to be focused on supporting the community, building free content, assisting with open source projects. So we're going to be continuing to create guides, the grammar guides that we talked about earlier, more language guides, running the community, so providing free support in the community, and then also running all of the community events and continuing to accelerate that process. We're also planning to build some free tools for learners to use going forward. And then right now we have all of these projects that have been springing up because one of the things that we want to be is a place where committed, passionate language learners who want to improve the community and improve the experience for other learners, where they have a place to meet and start working on projects together. And we want to continue to help in those open source projects. And so one of the things that I'd like to do is actually hire a dedicated project manager for community projects to help organize them, to recruit volunteers, to make sure that they're actually, moving at a decent clip. And then, if there's something that we think is really important, we will even sponsor a community project that we think should be, public, and we want to bring to fruition. So as of going forward, the Patreon is just going to be focused on supporting the community. Separately, the Refold company as a company is going to be focusing on optimizing the path to fluency. So that's what all the data science work that we're doing, the tooling and, the Anki decks, et cetera, and then doing the paid support. So if learners want more support and accountability and structure, and they want us to help them shape their language learning routine, we'll be offering that as a separate service, completely external to Patreon. So some of the immediate changes that come out of this are we're going to stop all paid support through Patreon and move that over to the company side of things. So we have the Q&As, the monthly live streams where people ask questions and get help, and then also an Ask an Expert channel where people could just post in Discord and we'd respond to them. So we're just going to kill all of those and move them on the Patreon side and move all of that over to the company side. So if you are the kind of person that wants to just support all the free stuff, then Patreon is the place to go. If you are the kind of person that wants support with yourself or your own learning process, we'll create an offering on the other side to help you with things. A couple other changes. So the Patreon server is basically dead already. So we're just going to merge that into Refold Central. And then we're basically just going to make all the patron levels the same. So the idea here is, if you want to support at the level that you can reasonably do it. The features, here we go. The features that you get are a custom Discord rule, a vanity rule, so that you can change your colors and get the crane icon and all of that. We are going to enable people to have the ability to vote on future projects. So we really want to get a lot of feedback as to what we should be working on. And so the community will help inform that. And the amount of money that you give per month will be the amount of votes that you are putting towards any specific project. We'll do a monthly behind the scenes live stream, and we're not going to gate this one to specific levels. Everybody who is a patron is going to have access to this every month. So we'll do a behind the scenes look at what we've been working on. I'll do my presentation, my monthly presentation. You'll see what we've been working on the past 4 weeks, what we're working on the next 4 weeks. And then we'll just open up to Q&A. We'll have moderators on and admins expanding just beyond just like me and Lamont and more into just getting everybody like a roundtable discussion going and then taking your questions. We'll provide discounts on future products and services. So we need to price these effective or the right way. So we're not 100% sure exactly how we're going to do this, but this is an idea that Brett out of the Japanese server suggested, where let patrons partake in services that at a discounted rate. And I think that's actually a great idea. And then we have the $20 patron level, which we are still going to continue listing on the website. So if you are a $20 patron, you're up on the website already. We've moved all of that over to the community site. So if you want to see all the projects that we're working on and let us know which one you want to vote for, we're going to actually set up that voting infrastructure shortly. But that's all up on the community site now. There's a page called the Public Record where you can see everything that we've worked on over the past year, and then our current and future projects where you can see what we're currently focused on and what we're going to be working on going forward. So some of the upcoming free projects. So what we're focused on right now is a website reorganization. So we started with just the roadmap, which is basically just a blog, right? It's just a list of articles. And then we started adding stuff to it, and it kind of grew organically. And the way it's structured now is like really annoying for people. We get lots of complaints about, I can't find this thing, or like, I don't know how to do this. Like the UX is kind of bad. So we're taking a step back and redesigning the way we want people to flow through the system and find the content that they should have access to. And so we're going to spend the next month or so reorganizing the website to make sure that all of the information is easily accessible. The next big project we're going to start after that is a content collector. So right now we've got these Google Docs and these Google Sheets, and they're just not scalable whatsoever. And so we want to make it as easy as possible for members of the community to share content recommendations with their peers. So we are planning to implement that, make it very easy for you to just submit links. And then we'll take care of the organization and the recommendations so that learners know what they should be immersing with at any given time. And the data science stuff that we've been doing is going to fit neatly into that. And then for the last two things, I actually want to bring on Lamont to talk about, because we're going to be relying on him pretty heavily to help build out these other areas. So Lamont, I'm going to stop sharing my screen. Are you on this? There we go.
Yep. Hello.
Hi there. Good morning.
Yes. Okay. Working. Yeah. Good afternoon, I guess.
Yeah, it's about 1:30 here. What time is it there?
6:30.
Oh, wow. So very early for you. Appreciate you being on the call so early. It's definitely tough with the time difference.
No, it was all good. It was all good this time.
Yeah. Cool. So there are two projects that Lamont is going to be talking about. So the first one is the curriculum. You want to talk about that?
Yeah. So there's currently the roadmap. I think there's still the abbreviated and kind of full one. Is that still
yeah? There's the detailed and the simplified. Yeah.
Yep. And people have been requesting a video version of that, which on the one hand is like massively daunting. Like, as in, it's already quite a big roadmap, and then like, you know, stuff in video, sort of a 3-sentence video is already a lot more work than actually writing 3 sentences. So, but it fits perfectly with something I was kind of thinking of doing. Sorry about my family in the background making a lot of noise. I don't know if that can be heard, but it fits perfectly with something I was already sort of planning on doing, but just sort of haven't gotten around to, essentially, and was like, oh man, that's a massive undertaking. So yeah, I'm sort of, Ethan and I haven't gone into super specific detail yet, but we're looking at me being the one to create the videos that will go on the Refold channel that are essentially videos of the roadmap. I assume more than one video, because otherwise it would be like a 2-hour video.
Yeah. I think, the roadmap, the detailed one is 50,000 words and it's like 45 articles, which is enormous. And there's just like, there's key pieces of information in it that are like just really important for people to learn. And, a lot of people don't want to read it. So I think there's a very good reason to create a video roadmap. It's just so big of a project. But because like I mentioned when I was talking to Matt, we have this enormous backlog of Q&A videos. And the challenge is, they're not organized in any particular way. We have the search feature, so you can actually like search through everything, but some of them are much more useful than others. And so I think we can short circuit the process, or speed up the process of building a video version, if we just reuse all the content that we have. And where Lamont is going to be really important here is that even if we organize all that properly, there's going to be big gaps, things that we want to talk about, things that are not, that we don't currently have Q&As for. And so, one of the, and also there's some other content that, Matt has created that's really valuable, but it's like not really suitable for a public audience. And so, for instance, Lamont, what's the video that you're working on right now?
Yeah. I completely blanked out on it. It's,
how to not suck.
This is terrible.
Yeah.
That's right. How to enjoy a language, how to have fun in a language that you still suck at. Yeah. Just shows where my mind's at. So how to have fun in a language that you suck at, because that's a massive part of immersion learning, is immersing when you still don't actually understand anything. So and Matt has a video on that, but we would like to make a more sort of publicly suitable one, I guess.
Matt's got a bit of a potty mouth in his early videos. I think that one he drops some F-bombs in it. So
well, yeah, and it's also like it's also just like Matt was like a teenager and was just, it kind of comes off as a video of just some guy recording in his bedroom, because it is. So yeah, and like even though that's actually what most YouTube videos are, there's like a way of presenting that so that it looks as professional as the actual people behind it. So like we don't want to like we don't want to pretend to be like the ultimate, like we are the authority on language learning kind of thing, but at the same time we are saying, like, we're putting our way forward as an argument for like, this is how you learn a language. And so we want the professionalism of the videos to match the professionalism of the company, or the face of the company.
Yeah, if we want to appeal to a broader audience, we need to have that professional side of us. And coming from a background of YouTube influencers and YouTube videos and Discord channels with a bunch of young folks in it, we sometimes don't really appreciate the more professional side of things that other members of the world expect. So putting on that professional face and allowing them to see that we are here, we are serious, and we're going to help them with learning a language. So anyways, so what that's going to end up looking like is we're going to take that backlog of Q&A videos and we're going to organize them effectively. We've already gone through the process of categorizing a bunch of them. Big thank you to Flows and Frame in the community for going through these videos and categorizing them. And then from that list, we're going to try and organize it into a coherent curriculum. And that's going to be a free project that's going to be integrated into the Quick Start guides so that people can learn about the process at the same time as they are setting up their tools and starting to immerse. And then Lamont will be there to help fill in the gaps, because there's definitely going to be gaps. Cool. And then the second big video project that we are looking at, you want to talk about that?
Yes, and just give it, this is always like your memory just goes completely.
It's the interviews.
Oh yes, we are the interviews, yes. So there are tons of success stories already from the 18 months of Refold that have existed, and we want to get some of those, or as many as we can really, some of those stories onto into interview format, basically, to be inspiring to other people learning that language and just other languages. So yeah, we want to hear all about people's experience of like, oh, I didn't understand this, and then I went and did this, and blah blah blah. But I'm sure you all understand what an interview is. So yeah, and I'm going to be the one conducting the interviews. Asking the questions and chatting with learners about their experience immersion learning.
Yeah, so this is sort of like a two-sided project. One is the interviews with learners, and that's motivational, right? Like new learners coming in, they want to know that it's possible, and they want to see it's much easier to commit to doing it if you can see that somebody else has already done it and been successful. And there are some like great success stories in the community. There's one from the French server that's like somebody tested out of like 4 semesters of college French in just like 2 months of immersion. Like full-time immersion, like very hardcore, but the fact that they were able to accomplish that so quickly was very impressive. There's somebody else who has done immersion hardcore for German and like very quickly was able to understand conversation. And then I think it was Alicia out of the, I'm not sure if it's Alicia or Alicia, but she wrote a blog post on the website, and she also did an interview in one of the communities. And if I'm not mistaken, she tested out of several semesters of Mandarin after, I think it was 9 months. I'll need to double check that number, but we keep hearing these amazing success stories from immersion learners. And that is something that we want to share with other people, because when it comes to language learning, there's so much desperation. Like as we've been interviewing clients to find good ones that we think we can work with, there are some folks who are like, I've been trying to learn a language for a decade. I've been trying to learn a language for 12 years and still have not made that progress. And so being able to see a good example of somebody who has actually already done it, I think is going to be very inspiring for them, and it's going to help them trust the process a little bit more, because there is still that gap at the beginning where you just do have to take it on faith a little bit, because there's this big portion where you're just like staring at something you don't understand. So there's that side of it, and then the other side of it is the actually studying learners. So some of you may have seen that in the community, we requested if you are doing time tracking data, we would love if you could send that to us so that we can start to compile it into a format that people can understand. So we can create like case studies around, what people did and put some numbers behind how they learned, so we can really start to understand what was the process and share that with other people so they understand what the process will be for them. So if you are a time tracker, if you've taken notes and you have that record of your learning experience, we would really appreciate if you sent that to us, research@refold.la. We're compiling all of that into something coherent.
Yeah. Not much more for me to say on that. But yeah, I would actually be... Actually, there is. I would be interested to see that myself, because the kind of number of hours that people seem to come up with for like fluency in a different language or proficiency or whatever they want to call it, it's like, I swear they're just making the numbers up.
Yeah, definitely.
And I have been guilty of that. In fact, I've heard people repeat a number that I've said, and I'm pretty sure they've taken it from my video, except that I put all these provisos on it. It's like, if to have a reasonable subconscious blah blah blah. I didn't say you will be fluent after this long, but I've heard it's kind of like the 10,000 hours thing, but in reverse, where people have said like, you will sound native after 1,600 hours. I was like, I never said that.
Yeah, exactly. People throw these numbers around all the time. And like we do too, right? Like we have number expectations in the guide, but that is purely based on the very few anecdotes that we had access to, and some estimations and some guesstimations, really. There's no hard data backing up that information. And some people really want that before they commit to engaging with this process. They really want to understand how difficult and how time consuming it's going to be. And I think this is an area where second language acquisition research is actually really poor. There's a lot of research around very small scale experiments, like a couple weeks or a couple months. but there's very little in terms of multiple years. And we really need to start doing more longitudinal studies where we track people across an entire multi-year process, and that's a very hard experiment to run and to measure. And so we are looking to start compiling that information just so we have that accessible to us, because our goal is to really solve this problem of second language fluency and create a path that is well defined and backed up by research. And that's only possible if we can start collecting the level of data that we need in order to make that argument.
Yeah.
So cool. Well, that is all that we've got for you all as far as presentations and interviews and everything else. So at this point, we're gonna head on over to Q&As. So Ben, do you want to hop back on whenever you're ready?
Yeah.
Cool.
Here I am.
How are we doing in the Q&A chat? We got any questions?
There's a few, but I definitely want to plug it first. For anyone who is watching the stream or is in the live stream chat, we have a channel called Mid-Year Livestream Questions that you can post questions in. I'll be looking through those to find good questions to pose to our lovely answerers here. I have a couple to start with, but definitely looking for some more. We're looking for questions sort of about a lot of different things, ideally. Is there anything that you'd specifically kind of realms you'd like to kind of inspire people to ask about at the moment?
Yeah, so I mean, I think, we announced a lot of different things today. So I think there might be some overwhelm as far as, oh my God, there's all this stuff. So if you've got any questions about things that we've done already or projects that we're planning to work on in the future, any questions about Patreon and how we're restructuring it, any of the video projects that Lamont is going to be working on, any questions for, the team, honestly, like we could bring the team back on. Pretty wide variety of things. So
take a look into the live stream questions channel. There are also some up and down vote things if you want to say, oh, this is a great question, let's ask this one.
Sure.
And I'll start with one here that's pretty popular, I think, is asking about stage 4.
Yes.
What's going on with stage 4? Are there plans? What are they?
Yeah. So this is a bit of a odd topic. So we have an outline of stage 4, and I started the process of actually building it out and writing it all out. And it turned out to be a much bigger thing than I was intending to. And over the course of the past 6 months, we've gone through a lot of changes as a company in terms of hiring the team and trying to set up revenue sources outside of Patreon so that we could do the split that we're announcing today. And so it just fell down on the priority list because it was not immediately necessary for the restructuring of the business. Now that we actually have dedicated funds going from Patreon to community and to free resources, I do want to get back to it. The challenge is that, as I mentioned during the data science presentation, we sort of see this, the most challenging and the biggest problem right now is with new learners, people who are very early in the process who are not overcoming that barrier to being able to understand native content and enjoy native content. And so all of our energy has been focused on that one problem. Because we feel like that is sort of once we fix that, it sort of unleashes everything else. And so stage 4 has been deprioritized below that. We do have an outline of it, which I could release. It would probably take me a week or two to fix it up and write it out and get it all ready. The other challenge with stage 4 is that it splits up into 2 parts. One is sort of the how do you continue to improve your language ability, which is the continuing to immerse in domains, continuing to go basically through stage 2 and stage 3 with different domains and different ideas around enroll in courses, start reading books or textbooks. Coursera offers courses in many different languages, and there are edtech platforms across many different languages that you can start to enroll in. And it also talks about, specific sub skills that you might want to work on. So if you want to be a good orator and a good public speaker in that language, then that's a specific sub skill that you should work on, potentially with a professional coach to work on that skill. So that's half of the problem. But then the other half of the problem is cultural. It's how do you get into the mindset of a native, and how do you learn to act like a native? How do you learn to think like a native? And the problem that we have there is that there's not a lot of people in the community that can actually help describe that. Like Matt, he learned Japanese primarily from afar, and now he's getting an opportunity to go back to Japan and learn all of those cultural norms. But I didn't feel like we had enough information to even write a good article about that, or a good series of articles about that. And so to tackle that problem specifically is going to require recruiting other stage 4 learners, other people who have really learned how to integrate into culture. And that is just like a much bigger project, because I need to go out and find those people. And we do have some in the community, but they're few and far between. And then I am in talks with somebody from one of our partner companies, and she's very interested in that project. So we were actually thinking about starting it in September. So there's this open question of like, is it worth publishing the outline of stage 4? Which maybe it is. Maybe the community would actually like that, in which case we can knock that out relatively quickly. But the full complete version of it is going to take substantially more time, especially if we include this culture portion. So it's possible that they only care about the native side, or rather the accent and improvement in the language side of things, in which case we can knock that out relatively quickly. But the culture one is the one that I'm more hesitant to release without having more outside input on.
Great.
Yeah.
Another really quick question here, just to clarify, I think.
Sure.
Somebody noticed that Matt's name is not part of the Refold team on the About Us page, and he's just in there as a content partner. And they're saying, is he not actively a part of Refold anymore?
Yeah, so it depends what you mean by actively part of Refold. Like Lamont is also not listed there, but he's continuing to contribute. And so I made the distinction between the internal team, the people who are literally there every single day working on Refold, versus people who are occasionally contributing, or that we use as content producers, like Lamont making these videos. So the people on the internal team are the ones who are there every single day working on Refold. And no, Matt is not part of that internal team. He's very much on the content side. And with the announcement today where he's going to Japan, he is taking a break indefinitely. I'm sure he'll come back at some point, but or come back to public life at some point. But for now, he's just going to enjoy his life. And so, yeah, so he's listed as a content partner. And no, he is not part of the daily team that is in our meetings and doing the day-to-day work.
Great. And there's a good question here as well. It's sort of general, but also kind of specific, right? Sort of to see how you want to answer it. But do you plan on making a dedicated app or program to make refolding or immersing much more streamlined? Or do you have hopes to do that?
Yeah, we definitely have hopes to do that. There's a lot of different directions to take with it. So there are a lot of people who ask us, like, why don't you create an all-in-one immersion app? And the answer to that is it's very complicated. It's an enormous project. And I don't feel that we, I don't feel that, and there's already teams working on that. There's already lots of other immersion tools out there that are trying to accomplish that. And I have not yet identified how we would be different or better than them. We have ideas. There are things that we look at that problem and we're like, what these teams are doing and what people are asking for is us to automate the existing process. And my perspective is the existing process could be made a lot better. We can change things in the roadmap. We can change things in the way that people learn now that we've acquired so much more information about how people learn. And so for me, it's more like, let's go back to the drawing board and figure out what would we build if we were starting from a blank slate rather than let's try and automate all the things that currently exist, because the things that currently exist are already being automated by tons and tons of other teams out there. And so I don't see a particular reason to build that application until we understand exactly why it's going to be better than everything else.
That also ties really well into another question here, which is, do you want to focus more on a single method, or does Refold want to stay kind of as it is more open, so where it's really more of a general thing that is then kind of filled in with specific methods and tools and things like that?
Yeah. So basically everything that we've created so far, and really what a lot of the tools out there are designed around, is self-study, which is highly configurable, highly dynamic. We teach you the methodology, we teach you the theory behind it so that you can figure out like how to apply it to your life. And that's really worked well for the autodidacts, the people who are good at integrating these kind of ideas into their life and good at restructuring their life and their habits to accomplish these goals. But they are basically useless for people who are who want more direction and want more structure. And so there's what I would say is there's two parts to this problem. One is, how do you continue to provide things for the self-learners so that they can continue to improve their process, versus how do you narrow in on a very specific methodology and a very specific process for people who don't want to make the decision, so that you can just hold their hand through the entire thing and make sure that they know what they're doing at each step and make many of those decisions for them so that they can focus on learning the language. And so what I would say is Refold, the community, is going to continue working on the self-study side of things, where we want to produce content so that content and instruction so that learners can come in and for free get started doing self-study, and that they have access to all the content and all the tools. They understand how to use them. But then for people who are, they come in and they say, I just want to be told what to do. I just want to study the language. That's where the business side comes in. And so I would say we're going to do both. But from a business strategy standpoint, it's much more important for us to narrow the focus to the more specific solution. And the problem with the specific solution is that it's not going to work for a lot of people. Like, a lot of people aren't going to like that. It's not something that is going to be applicable to the people who are self-learners right now. It's meant to tackle a completely different part of the market, a different part of the learner base. And so what we're going to have to, when you make those decisions, you have to essentially choose who you're excluding from using that product. And that's just a difficult choice that you have to make. And the self-learners might be annoyed at the decisions that we make because they're not the target demographic for the thing that we end up building.
Yeah, speaking of target demographics,
Sure.
Are there any plans to expand the English learning communities sort of based in other languages or other countries, or hopes?
Yes, 100%. So of those three schools that I've talked to so far, all three of them are actually English learning companies, or ESL companies, or companies and schools rather. The English learning market is enormous. It's the biggest by far, because the ability to speak English can double or triple your ability to earn money. And so English is actually one of the primary, or the ability to speak English is one of the primary barriers to economic and social mobility. And so as a result, I believe the estimate is like 1.5 billion active English learners worldwide, which is enormous.
It's a lot.
And so we want to help those people. We want to meet that need. The challenge is actually getting to them. And making sure that we can provide them with the tools they need in order to actually be successful. And as it turns out, as we've learned from the translation process, it's actually quite difficult to get all these translations working. It takes an enormous amount of effort. And then getting them integrated into the site in a clean way. So we actually translated the English Quick Start Guide into Spanish, and we're planning to continue translating that. We've got the generalized EN1K, which should be relatively easy to transfer relative to the other decks. It's not like we're starting from scratch. We can just convert the definitions and the example sentences. So yes, we are trying to make movement on helping the English learner community grow and be successful. But it's just an enormous problem to solve, because you've got people coming from, potentially 80, 100 different native languages to try and learn English. And I was actually talking to one of my advisors at one point. He's like, well, can't you just teach it in English? Because, that's what everyone else does. Because so many of the English learning tools are taught in English. And it's like, that doesn't make any sense at all. So, the fact that other tools have really not succeeded in doing this makes me think that it's a hard problem that we're going to have to solve. So we'll start with the big ones, the languages that we think are going to be most impactful. And hopefully that will teach us enough to move on to the smaller languages.
Yeah, and there's also sort of, I think, two forking questions from this one. I'll go this direction first, which is, what about like Japanese to Korean or Japanese to Chinese? Is there sort of that point to like expand beyond either English as a target or English as a starting place as well with Refold?
Yeah. It's a combinatorics problem. So if you have 100 languages and you're going between them, it's 100 times 100, which is 10,000 different configurations. Mm-hmm. And that is very overwhelming. And so from my perspective, we'll probably end up doing just, English to every language, and then every language to English, with the assumption that once people can learn English, then it unlocks the rest of them. Mm-hmm. Though there are some thoughts around cognate relationships between different languages. So for instance, going from Portuguese to Spanish, or French to Spanish, or Spanish to French, we might tackle a couple of those. But my general mindset on this is to stay away from it, because it mm-hmm. sounds like a rat's nest of challenges, mm-hmm. and we just don't have the resources to do something that would be that complicated, and I don't even know how valuable it would be.
Yeah, and then the other side of that is sort of more of a question about the future of the Discord servers as well. Sure. Because sort of as you mentioned about getting people sort of into the community from potentially hundreds of different languages, having this extra layer of all that community support being difficult to access and use just because of the inherent sort of platform, which isn't. Yeah. But what are some plans for necessarily improving or working with the various Discord servers in the server network?
Yeah, things have gotten very complicated over the past year and a half, both on the website and in the Discord communities. And I think Discord in particular, it scares a lot of people away. Mm-hmm. Because it's a program that is different, it looks different, and it acts different, and people there's a learning curve to it, even if we didn't have everything set up properly, or didn't have everything set up the way we do. But the setup, the things that we have set up the way we do, that causes even more problems, because we're trying to offer all of these different, all the different languages and all the different configurations. And I don't actually have a good answer for this right now. The honest truth, realistically, to support a language for real, to get it so that native speakers can learn English, we actually need to bring on somebody to represent that configuration. We need somebody to come in who can relate to them, who can help them through the process. Because, we can potentially create a slightly easier community. We might be able to create a forum or something like that. But at the end of the day, there's still going to be complications. There's still going to be issues. And so we need to have somebody who represents that configuration, advocate for that group in order to tell us what they need and how we can best meet their needs. And I don't have an immediate plan for how to fix that problem. I know the website reconfiguration should help, but then the Discord reconfiguration is something, it's a rat's nest that I have not delved into yet.
Mm-hmm. And then again, combining two questions here to sort of go back to another part of our presentation with Josh's analysis and the data that we're sort of looking at. What's the sort of golden idea for like a product or something to come out of that? And is there possibly like an ETA for like when Refold starts to offer this sort of business side of Refold, like a product, if that makes any sense?
Yeah. I'd say the short-term answer to that is content ladders and customized content ladders. So being able to say, here's like a general purpose one that like anybody can go through, but then taking the next step and say, based on your YouTube history, here's what we would recommend as your content ladder. And we do have some ideas of what we actually want that to look like. And we already have a prototype in place that we're using with clients. And we are planning to release that to the community more broadly. But the more important thing to me is the content collector as like the first big foundational step to everything else. So we do have lots of ideas of how we want to make this configuration, but I don't want to commit to a specific vision of it because I think it's very much still in flux.
Speaking of talking about things that are very much in flux, do you have any ideas or possible thoughts on what expanding into schools and the education system might look like? A lot of people sort of have brought up ideas of how do you then test improvement? What are you sort of looking for in a successful general student in that way? This is obviously very speculatory since it's very far in the future, but just curious on some of those thoughts.
Yeah, we would need to be much more formalized in terms of saying, here is how we demonstrate improvement. One of the things I was actually surprised to learn about is that ESL schools in the US that are funded by the federal government are required to use a test called the CASAS test, which helps evaluate learners, and then the schools are evaluated by whether learners move up a level. So they go through 40 hours of instruction and then they move up a level, and they're graded based on the number of levels that they move up. And we actually downloaded a whole bunch of sample tests to go through them. And I was surprised to learn that they're all comprehension based. There's like no outputting whatsoever. And the comprehension basis is the highest level is listening comprehension. And it's relatively simple listening materials. And so I'm actually quite optimistic that we can reuse and we can actually meet the needs of the existing test through our methods, as long as we provide targeted materials for building up for that test. I think that's generally how we would want to tackle that going forward. Not try and change everything all at once. Say like, hey, here's what you're currently doing. Here is a way for us to improve that and improve it on the metrics that you're already subject to. And so we're going to have to get creative about that, because it's not like we can say, okay, change your whole curriculum and teach your people all of this stuff, or teach your students all this stuff. It's more like, okay, what is a small change that we can make to get learners in the classroom to start engaging with English more when they go home? So, there's tons of ideas of how we can address that, but I don't know enough about the educational system with the actual facts on the ground to even understand what issues we're going to face in that process. I know that it's really, really difficult to break into public schooling. So that would be like the last thing that we try to do. But the adult education and private schooling, I think we have a much better shot at doing. And some of the partnerships that I've been discussing, or partners that I've been talking with about this, they also have plans to expand into other schools and other areas. And so we're considering partnering with them and allowing them to manage the distribution while we manage the curriculum and the tooling. But it's still very early in those conversations.
Awesome. Oh yeah, okay, now I'm muted. To piggyback off this, I'll go back to one of the very first questions that you asked, which was, what are we each sort of specifically excited for in the future of Refold? And I want to invite Lamont back on to answer that in his words. But also, I don't think you necessarily gave your own answer. So I think both of you would be great to hear from.
I'm just excited by everything.
Well, yeah, but that's not the fun answer.
I know. Lamont, you wanna take a whack at this?
I'll take a stab, but I'm a little bit the same. I mean, I'm not as excited by all the stuff you're talking about. I'm glad you're talking about it with all the like integrating this and getting into the schooling system and stuff. I'm like, ugh, yuck. Sounds like hard work, but I am excited for. I'm excited to like actually get this idea out to more people. Like it's just so difficult. I was at Swedish Midsummer about a month ago, and I found myself having to explain sort of over and over again, like it doesn't work the way you think it works, and and so many of them, like even though they speak English and that's actually how they learned English, because they were made to study English at school, they have this idea that that's actually how they learned it. They don't realize that it's actually all the movies and YouTube and everything that they've watched their entire life. But I just want that, I want to get the idea out to more people so that we can just, I want to change everyone's ideas about how languages are learned, because I was the same until like 2.5 years ago. I thought like, yeah, this is how you learn a language. And
you're just tired of having the same conversation over and over again.
Exactly. Like,
stuck in a time loop.
Yeah, exactly. So I don't know, like, if that's really a very specific answer, but I want there to be a face of, I want Refold to become huge, not because of the business side of it, but just because of like the general knowledge that is out there about, or not out there, as the case may be, as to the value of immersion learning. Yeah.
That's fair. I definitely have this conversation, half a dozen times a week. So I I feel your pain on that one.
Yeah.
What am I most excited for? So before I was doing Refold, I was actually operating as a productivity and product management coach. And that's actually how Matt and I connected, because I wanted to sort of play that role for developing the guide. And there's a lot of ideas in that realm that like really excite me. I really love that concept, and helping people to overcome the barriers to accomplish their goals just generally. And so a little surprisingly, I'm actually like 2 years later, right back to that same idea, just doing it within the context of learning a language. And so I'm really excited to actually be able to do that, because I was not expecting to. I thought I was going to like give up on that side so that I could focus on the language learning thing. And now it's like, oh no, this is actually like still very applicable here, because I genuinely think that there's this idea of like, you just show up, there's all these free resources and you just use them and then you get fluent. And it doesn't acknowledge the fact that people actually have a really hard time changing their habits and their life to accomplish these kind of goals. And so like the story that I tell is, when I went through school, it was very easy for me. I was a very good test taker, didn't have to study much. And so I didn't have any good habits when I graduated college. And a couple of years after graduating college, I just kept trying to like accomplish my own goals. I had all these personal goals that I was trying to work on, and I just never made any progress with any of them. I would like give it a couple weeks and then I'd lose interest. And at a certain point, I was just like, this is not going to help me reach my goals. Like I see a vision for my life, and the path that I'm on is never going to get me there. So it's time for me to like figure my shit out, figure out how I'm going to actually accomplish my personal goals. And it took like 3 to 4 years of constant like reading books and experimentation to figure that out. And like, how do you actually complete a personal project that takes 2 to 5 years if you don't have any good habits? Especially when you come from a schooling system that puts so much structure and accountability around you that you never had to learn how to build that structure and accountability for yourself. And I think when we surveyed learners to understand what they were struggling with, I just heard the same story over and over again. It's like, I struggle with motivation. I struggle with discipline. I don't know how to have structure. I want accountability to like keep me focused. And I latched onto that. I'm like, great, I can just take these same ideas I'd already been thinking about years ago and just apply them to what we're doing now. And I'm very excited by seeing the work that our clients are doing, and the level of commitment that they've brought to the table, and the fact that they're showing up every day to work on the language for 2 hours a day or more, is like, that comes from the structure and accountability, and the ability to teach people how to do that is something that really excites me.
Awesome. I'm gonna put out another probe for any more questions to put into the live stream questions area, because we've cleared out the current backlog. There's nothing else currently pending.
Okay.
And so yeah, because we're also right about at the time we wanted to end anyways. So
Yeah,
we
exactly.
could also just easily just let it slide on by and call it a day.
Sure. Yeah. Well, I think we are good to end this one. It's been
Great.
2.5 hours, so I think that's a good amount of content. I'm tired of talking. So I want to thank everybody for tuning in and for listening to us talk for 2 hours. Really hope that you learned something, that you appreciate what we've done here, and if you want to see us continuing to create awesome content and helping learners learn the language, head on over to Patreon and subscribe. If you want to see what we've been working on in more detail and what we're planning to work on in more detail, head on over to the community site. You can just browse at your leisure. Huge thank you to all the people who put stuff up on the community site, all of the members of the community who volunteer and create content and help learners. We really could not do it without you. You are what makes the community amazing and great. So huge thank you to everyone on that side of things. And then to everyone who was on the call today, thank you for joining, for giving up your Saturday for a couple hours on your Saturday to join us here and to share your thoughts and opinions and your ideas with the community. So a big thanks to Matt and Lamont, and then the internal team, Ben, Vanessa, Clayton, Josh. And on that note, I think we are ready to tidy up. So thanks, everybody, and we will see you for the next one.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye, everybody.
Bye.